Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to The Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. Decent week, actually, despite being in the dog days of the offseason here. We are in mid-August. Decent week for Suns news. We're going to hit on a lot of stuff in this episode that we didn't get a chance to talk about last week. Decent day also for NBA news.
Yeah.
Decent day for, surprisingly, NBA bombshell reports dropping at 3 a.m. Phoenix time on Monday morning, which was really fun for, I was already awake, but I imagine really fun for a lot of people to wake up to.
Yeah.
It was 6 a.m. for me, which is why I was awake, but yeah.
The headline of that is, does James Harden have the courage that Kevin Durant did not have last offseason, right? Because what happened, let me just clarify what happened. If anyone missed it, the whole situation, and this is NBA related, but I want to talk about it anyway just because it's August. This is a nice thing to have to talk about. What happened is James Harden was a free agent or could have been a free agent in the offseason, opted into his contract, it appears, with the understanding that he would be traded. He has not been traded. Philadelphia last week leaked to the press that they plan on bringing James Harden back. James Harden at some sort of camp or promotional event in China early this morning in the U.S., as far as U.S. time, said that he believes that Daryl Morey is a liar and he will never play for a team that Daryl Morey is a general manager for, in a very dramatic way, which was also, by the way, kind of not dramatic because it's James Harden.
Repeated it, too.
And he repeated it,
yeah. He said, Daryl Morey is a liar and I will not be a part of a team that he is a part of. I will repeat that. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will not be a part of a team that he is a part of. And was so frank in those words that, honestly, before Shams tweeted, because I saw the initial video coming out from some other reporters before Shams tweeted about it. Again, this was like literally 5:45, 6 a.m. Eastern time for me, checking the timeline, scrolling through, and I'm thinking to myself, this is a deep fake. It's 2023.
Oh, what a world.
That's where my mind went first. And when people use it in sports, because we've seen it in the past in sports, I thought I was getting ball sacked. For people who don't know, Ball Sack Sports is a Twitter account.
Parody. Twitter
account. Parody, whatever. That gets people that way. And I just thought this is the world we live in now. But then Shams came out with a confirmation. There were multiple videos with multiple different video angles as well, sort of corroborating for all this. And we quickly realized that this was real. But you asked the question, does he have the courage that KD has? I don't know if that's the... or that KD did not have, sorry. I don't know if that's so much the question, because even if he did or didn't, there's such a talent gap between who Kevin Durant still is as a 35, 36-year-old and who James Harden is now as a 33-year-old. And that's really what prevents me from having a lot of sympathy for James in the situation. I do have some level of sympathy for him, and I think we can talk about Daryl Morey and, you know, questionable moves that he's made, and even if he has questionable ethics or not. But James Harden is just not that good anymore.
He's good.
Certainly, but he's good, but certainly the book is out on him as a playoff performer.
He's more of an all-star than a superstar. He is
of questionable goodness at this point.
He's basically Julius Randle now.
He used the Houston Rockets as his escape hatch all season long, right? There were these rumors coming out, leaked by people in Harden's camp, that he wants to return. He's going back to Houston. They're going to make it happen when he's a free agent this summer. And then all of a sudden, Houston spurns him. And Houston says, you know what? Give us Fred VanVleet. Give us Dylan Brooks and Jock Landale with our $70 million of cap space, and we feel like we're set. Houston did not actually want James Harden at the end of the day.
The thing that I find funny about it is how vague he has to be because he can't talk. Okay, so I guess the way I'll put it is this. There are two options for what he's referring to as far as Daryl Morey lying to him. One, in his last contract, supposedly, James Harden took less money so that they could add some role players onto the Philadelphia team.
PJ Tucker, Daniel House.
Exactly. Which, by the way, what a disaster for both of those players. Because neither of them were good in Philadelphia.
Yeah, obviously not needle movers. But I will say this is the part where you feel some sympathy for Harden, only in the sense, he was still making over $30 million. But he gave up about $14, $15 million per season to sign that contract with Philadelphia last summer so that they could have extra money to go out and seek these role players who ultimately did not move the needle for them whatsoever.
Supposedly, there was some sort of understanding that he would be paid back for that. You know, giving up money here so that when he becomes a free agent, when he becomes eligible to sign for more money, they would get him back for that. Which, by the way, is considered cap circumvention, and it's not allowed. So he can't say, Daryl Morey promised me more money when I signed my last contract in this contract, because that's against the rules. You can't do that. You can't make that kind of promise. It's just cap circumvention. So the other option, so he can't. So first of all, if that's what he's referring to when he says Daryl Morey lied to me, he can't say that. So he's just kind of stuck being vague. The other option, which I think is maybe both of these things are true, it's that because he could have been a free agent, he had the option to decline his final year. He opted into it, and it sure seemed like when he first initially opted into it, which feels like a year ago at this point, which is really more like a month and a half ago, it sure seemed like he did that after speaking with Daryl Morey and understanding that he would do that in order to be traded, which, by the way, also benefits Daryl Morey because he could have left for nothing as far as Philadelphia is concerned. Maybe he would have made less. We don't know exactly what the market was for him as far as the amount of money he would make. But in this case, in this scenario, Morey gets something back for James Harden instead of nothing.
And to be very clear, the reporting at the time, a month and a half ago when he opted in, was that it was with that expectation.
Yeah.
So they were expecting that the two parties would work together and find a new home for James Harden. However, from Morey's perspective, and of course Morey hasn't responded to any of this. He hasn't said anything yet. I'm really curious what he's going to say, actually, when he's finally going to speak on this. Because it's kind of, brings up questions about the player empowerment era and all that GMs have had to deal with. But from Morey's perspective, like I said, Houston's camp all season long, rumors about him being disgruntled in Philly, not satisfied with how their season is going. He's going to opt out and return to Houston is the rumor. When Houston turns their back on Harden, Morey is thinking to himself, well, that's it. He has no leverage. Fuck him. The deal's off. Things have changed. The circumstances have changed. Why should I honor his previous request? He has no leverage. He's not going to get a max contract anywhere else. Why should I pay more for when I don't need to? And I kind of understand that perspective as well.
Look, I think both sides are looking out for their best interests, but one side is taking more heat than the other, and that's James Harden, in my opinion, at least from what I've seen. And that's partially because of the history that James Harden has, where he forced his way off of Houston to Brooklyn and then forced his way from Brooklyn to Philadelphia. But The funniest part about that to me is now he's forcing his way off the team. There is two sides to this. There's Daryl Morey. There's James Harden. James Harden's getting heat. But when James Harden forced his way off of Brooklyn to Philadelphia, Daryl Morey was involved with that too. There was no way Daryl Morey wasn't colluding behind the scenes to get James Harden in Philadelphia. So to me, like, it's just so funny that people are like, oh, here he goes, James Harden doing this again. And it's like, well, last time Morey did it too. You know, like, I just find it funny that people really are taking it out on Harden in a way. And I think that in the long run, history will not look that kindly at Daryl Morey's place in all of this either. I mean, he might even get fired tomorrow, for all we know.
Yeah, he could.
Because it's just not going very well. Now, as far as what the resolution is, I don't know. He waited with Ben Simmons, who didn't want to play in Philadelphia. Ben Simmons just sat out until he was traded. And he waited it out as long as possible until he could get James Harden. Will he do that with James Harden? Probably. It sure feels like he might. I mean, he's the one general manager I feel like might actually do that.
Even before any of this happened, and certainly now everyone will say that the Sixers offseason was a disaster, but we were talking about, for our Patreon feed episode, we were breaking down all the teams in the Eastern Conference just a few days ago, and the offseasons that they had. And even then, we were talking about how bad of an offseason this was for the Sixers.
Yeah.
They brought in Mo Bamba and Patrick Beverley.
Yeah.
And they lost several playable role players, guys who were like number 6, 7, 8 in their rotation. And Jalen McDaniels, Shake Milton, George Niang, guys who can play in the playoffs. And they brought in two guys who I don't know if they can play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, and now they're probably, they're not going to get a great return on a Harden deal, if there's even a deal out there to be made.
Yeah.
So the Sixers are kind of screwed. History is not going to look kindly to your point on Daryl Morey. History is also not going to look kindly on James Harden.
No. Well, he seems to not care, which part of me kind of respects. It's just like he's like, I don't know. But these guys, they sign contracts with teams, and then the teams can trade them a few months later in most of these cases. And players, just have to deal with that in a way that, is sort of unfair to them. And from the other side of that, when they try to force their way somewhere else, part of me respects when they sort of pull out all the stops to try to get where they want. Is it annoying? Yeah, it's kind of annoying to watch. Am I scared of it ever happening to the Suns? Yeah, of course. Like, I don't want that to happen to the team that I'm rooting for. But yeah, as far as how this affects the Suns, I don't know that it does, right? I mean, there is a world where these teams all of a sudden, like, can you think of another team that could use James Harden at this point? Besides the Clippers?
I saw Bill Simmons joking about
the Wizards,
poking fun at House, who came on our pod a little while ago, saying that the Wizards should get him. I thought that was really funny. They do feel like the kind of team that would make a big swing for a player like James Harden, right? Because in general, he's too big of a risk for most contenders. Certainly, he doesn't make sense for the Suns. Had a couple people reach out on Twitter asking about, like, should the Suns go for James Harden? And I'm like, of course not. Why should they go for a guy who is clearly... I mean, I will say this for James, still a good playmaker, but the finishing numbers have just dropped so much for him over the past couple of years, not to mention the questionable production in the playoffs. He's just not good enough to justify taking the ball out of Booker's or Durant's, arguably even Bradley Beal's hands. He's just not good enough anymore. Doesn't make sense.
There's two teams...
And I don't think makes sense for a lot of contenders either.
I'll just say this. We can move on if we'd like, but... I think there's two teams that, well, I guess you could make the case for three teams, but there are two teams for sure that you and I kind of said. We went through every team in the NBA over the last 2 weeks, and we talked about their off seasons. There's two teams that stood out as teams that we said, what are they doing? Besides Philadelphia, by the way. The two teams that we said that for was the Chicago Bulls and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I only mentioned those two teams to say, should they do this? I don't know that it fixes anything for either of those teams. Maybe the Timberwolves, if they could trade Cat. Would they? I don't know.
What would the Bulls trade? Like Levine?
It would have to be DeRozan. DeRozan only has 1 year left on his deal this next year. So I already looked at that trade. And from a perspective of just the contracts lining up, that's the one that actually makes sense. Then you could say...
I don't hate that for Philly. I don't hate that.
No. I think it's pretty good for Philly. The question you have to ask is, why would Chicago do that? Does it make them better? I actually think they probably win more games in the regular season, but I don't think they improve really at all as a playoff product. They're basically exactly the same,
No, not really.
or maybe worse once James Harden turns into a pumpkin. I don't know. Can't say Atlanta because that's another team we weren't sure about what they did. That makes no sense basketball wise. Yep. We'll see what happens.
The only other thing I guess to say here is just referencing Devin Booker's role. You talked about being scared that this would ever happen to the Suns. It's a new era. It could one day, but I expressed my general satisfaction on Twitter earlier today just with the fact that Devin Booker would have had so many reasons to leave us already, and he's never pulled a stunt like this. And it's happening several times every season now that we see it with a new star player, new disgruntled star. Even, guys like Kevin Durant, who now I'm rooting for. Hope Kevin Durant succeeds this year by all means. I'm a big fan now, but there's something extra special to a guy with the character of Devin Booker. There's a reason Suns fans love him so much.
I think from the perspective of a general manager needs to understand what you just said there, in that it's the new era of the NBA where this can sort of happen at any time. And from that perspective, I do give credit to James Jones for constantly reshaping this team. Now, we, of course, had last offseason where Kevin Durant held us in hostage, which is a similar thing happening, I guess you could say, to the Clippers and the Philadelphia 76ers, the Heat, and the Portland Trail Blazers. 4 teams going through that right now. But outside of that, this team has essentially improved, I think, their postseason chances at every season since James Jones became the general manager.
The incremental success is really what did it for them. I think frequently about how if that bubble run didn't happen, I think it might have ended right there. That was such a bizarre end to that season, but James Jones coming in and just providing like that little bit of talent just to stabilize the roster. You had Ricky Rubio, you had Aaron Baines, you had Kelly Oubre, so that they didn't have to jump from being a 19-win team to a 55-win team with Chris Paul. Not to mention that those incremental moves are what enabled the Chris Paul trade in the first place. You jumped to the mediocre basketball, and then you were able to push yourself into better positioning with the Chris Paul trade. But like, if that 5th year James Jones had come in his first full-time season, and the Suns had won like 25 games again, Booker was in his 5th season by that point. He was averaging like 27 and 6 assists. And if they were still that bad, I think it might have been over there. He was in his 2nd contract at that point. He could have forced himself out of that situation with enough will.
Yeah. He just doesn't seem like he's built that way. Which
he'll never
grateful
admit it.
for that, right?
He'll never admit it. He never talks to the media about this stuff. I hope one day we get some sort of interesting retrospective from him on his career, because I mean it's just like a feeling that I have, but I feel like we were closer to a disaster scenario than anyone lets on.
So we know when the Suns are playing next. We know the preseason schedule. We know the first game of the year. I'm excited to talk to you about it, and I think it will be an interesting season. I can already tell just from these 2 games that they announced in the regular season. But let's talk about the preseason schedule first. Suns basketball returns officially on October 8th in Detroit, which, by the way,
2 months away.
Suspicious that they start their season right next to where Matt Ishbia lives, right?
I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking this is the funniest when was the last time we played Detroit in a preseason game?
Never. That's why I feel like it's suspicious.
I'm used to preseason being like, yeah, let's take it easy. We'll go to LA. We'll go to San Antonio. We'll fly to
the Adelaide 36ers are ducking the smoke, man.
They're ducking
the 36ers. Smoke. They don't want to come play Durant now.
But Detroit, I wasn't even thinking about the Ishbia ankle, man. Just the fact that they're starting us off against Monty is hilarious to me.
It feels a little bit like Matt Ishbia wanted them to play in Detroit. I mean, look, Devin Booker's from near there as well, so it's kind of cool for both of them. That game on Sunday, October 8th, followed by the Denver Nuggets, Tuesday, October 10th, which I'm excited about as well. And then back-to-back games. It seems like early in the season or in preseason, one or the other, the Suns always play back-to-back games against the Portland Trail Blazers. I wonder if they'll do it again in the regular season, or if the new schedule, the way they're doing the group games, doesn't allow that kind of thing to happen as often. But Thursday, October 12th, Monday, October 16th, are the games against the Trailblazers, 1 at Portland, 1 at home, and then finally the last preseason game is a home game for the Lakers Thursday, October 19th, and it says Palm Desert, California. Do we know what that means? I didn't read the press release.
No, I don't.
I wonder if they're playing somewhere. Maybe remember when they used to play preseason games in that outdoor tennis arena?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That was really cool.
Palm
They should do that
Desert.
again.
Where the hell is Palm Desert?
Well, it's in California. That's as far as I know. But that's Thursday,
In
October
California.
19th. Preseason, I guess the reality of preseason is none of it matters that much, but it will be the first time we see those three guys on the court together, as well as all the other brand new guys who will probably play more minutes than they'll play in the regular season. So we'll see something like Eric Gordon playing more minutes, Watanabe playing more minutes.
Chimezi Metu, 30 minutes a game.
Yeah, playing more minutes, and that's kind of fun.
Udoka Azubuike. Yeah, I mean, look, we know what it's all about.
Anything stand
sorry,
out
I'm
in the
looking up.
preseason schedule for you?
Where the hell is Palm Desert? Okay, so it's in Coachella Valley. Sorry, I'm still looking this up.
Oh,
it's 2 hours from LA. It's kind of like halfway, but not halfway because it's in California, but it's kind of between the two places. So yeah, they're going to the desert, aptly named.
I wonder why.
I don't know why they're doing that.
Yeah, I wonder why they're playing there. It's just so maybe it is an outdoor arena.
It's near Palm Springs, just outside of Palm Springs. That makes sense as well.
It looks like
I don't know. Maybe we have a listener who lives in Palm Springs or Palm Desert, could give us more information about it afterwards. But yeah, I don't know why they're playing there, but should be fun. And I'm really looking forward to all of these games. Again, that they're starting against Detroit is freaking hilarious. But otherwise, what are we looking for in preseason? We are looking to establish basically a strong 8 to 10 man rotation.
Yeah. And just see
we
the
get
guys.
anything.
See the guys in the
Just see
jerseys
the guys.
play
If
games.
if we get some like more nice minutes out of, I don't know, Tumani Kamara or Jordan Goodwin or some of these guys who are just younger that we're expecting some development from, that would be nice. Some good Bull minutes.
Yeah.
Start off on a high note with Bull so that I can set the narrative early on and dunk on you as early as preseason game
Is he
one.
younger
So
than Tumani?
see what happens. I'll look that up for you.
I'm kind of curious
right now as well.
I feel like
He
we
might
looked
be.
that up recently, but I can't remember. He's young. He might be our youngest player, I guess is the point I was going to bring up there. Or Jordan Goodwin might be close too. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But the next thing is the actual opening game, which is 5 days after that last preseason game. And that is in San Francisco against the Golden State Warriors, as predicted on this podcast. The NBA is trying to ensure that Kevin Durant plays in front of fans in San Francisco for the first time since he left that team, and they're doing that by putting him there on the first game of the season, right?
Crazy that it's been that long.
Yeah.
First of all,
I think he played one time there during COVID when there was no fans in the arena, and that's
when there
the
were
only
no
time.
fans.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, I forgot about that. By the way, to answer your previous question, Tumani is the youngest player we have. He is 200 days younger than Bol. There's your answer.
Right.
But yeah, for this opening matchup against Golden State, I mean, obviously there's that narrative, and then the other narrative we have is getting to just enjoy the slow gradual destruction of the Warriors franchise, courtesy of Chris Paul. No, I'm kidding. But I am going to enjoy the drama from afar, and it is not lost on me all that could possibly go wrong in Golden State this season. They obviously will be at home, and they will have a strong home court advantage. They are always a difficult place to win on the road, but that should be a really fun one. Just an obvious rivalry for the NBA to promote, and expect I don't know, maybe all of we're going to get 4 games against Golden State this season. Are all of them going to be nationally televised? I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe 2 or 3 at least.
Yeah, I mean, probably. That's a good question. I would guess probably, just because the combination of the Warriors are going to get a ton and the Suns are going to get a ton. So why not? Why not make those nationally televised? I guess we don't have to talk about this too much, but I am sort of thinking about that team strategically. You know, the question of whether or not they start Chris Paul is going to be a question, but if they start Chris Paul against the Suns, he's going to have to, what's he going to do? Who's he going to guard? That's going to be a really tough situation for him. Because
he's going to guard.
Either he's guarding whoever. I guess it could be a Kogi.
Keita Bates-Diop.
You know, but if it's
Kogi
Keita Bates-Diop, he's guarding a 6'9" guy with 7'3" wingspan, which you know, of course he's crafty.
What if they even do what you've been kind of bargaining for recently? We're going to have, by the way, a more in-depth discussion about this. pretty soon. I feel like we're not there yet. But if the Suns go ahead and say, screw it, we're going all offense, let's start Eric Gordon. Because I know you've brought that up.
Right.
Eric Gordon's taking that matchup personally.
Yeah.
Those are two guys I suspect they have a good relationship.
Yeah, they're friends.
Are obviously
from what we know, they're
former
friends.
teammates.
Yeah.
Friends. But Eric Gordon's cooking him. Eric Gordon's going right at Chris Paul. If Eric Gordon, even if he's the fifth option on the Suns, if he's starting in that particular matchup, I feel good about his chances being able to cook Chris Paul. That being said, I don't think Chris Paul's going to start.
If they start Chris Paul, they're putting Draymond at center. That means Draymond's probably guarding DeAndre Ayton, and they have to guard Kevin Durant with Andrew Wiggins. And, Klay Thompson is going to guard one of Devin Booker or Bradley Beal. And then, Steph Curry's probably going to guard the other, which doesn't make a ton of sense for them. And it might work in the first game of the season, but once the Suns really start clicking, that would be an interesting lineup. I think they probably have to start Looney against the Suns. And look, as far as the Warriors are concerned, maybe they don't care about any sort of matchups in the first game of the regular season. They're just trying to get their starting lineup set. But I don't know. We don't have to talk too much about it because we're going to know a little bit more about what's happening by the time preseason comes. But I did find myself thinking about the strategies against these teams as soon as they announced, because I want to win.
Yeah.
The Suns are going to be on national TV.
Right.
It'd be nice if they won.
And at the end of the day, it's going to be fun because of the amount of offensive defensive too, but mostly offensive uncertainty that's underlining the storylines for both of these teams. Golden State, whether they start Chris Paul or not, they are going to have a lot to figure out. They might look like a hot mess on game one. And same might be true for us.
Yeah. Because they have three guys that have played like hundreds of games together. The Warriors do,
right?
So the Suns don't. So they do have that advantage at the very least. Potentially four guys in that starting lineup if they start Looney. The other game that was announced, another one that we sort of speculated at, and I wonder if you're surprised at this one, and that's Christmas Day at home, by the way, against the Dallas Mavericks. They clearly are going to lean into the fact that what we talked about in our beef episode, Devin Booker, Luka Doncic don't like each other, don't care who knows it. And now that battle will be on Christmas Day. Hopefully a game where Devin Booker gets to play, unlike last Christmas where he played 4 minutes. What do you think about that?
I'm surprised and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised in the sense that there are multiple factors building towards. There are reasons why the NBA wants to promote Dallas, right? It's not the biggest market, but it's one of the bigger markets in the NBA. Luka is Luka. Kyrie is a superstar as well. But on the other hand, like I just thought and the rivalry that we were talking about. But they also just sucked last year, so I thought they didn't deserve this spot. I thought like Christmas Day is really sacred to me. You only get 10 spots. Only 10 teams can go. It's more exclusive.
The NBA needs them to be good, right?
Yeah,
I know. They want Luka to be that guy.
I know they need him to be that guy, but like a Christmas Day spot to me is more sacred. It's more exclusive than a playoff spot even. So to me, it's really important that you pick right. And they just wouldn't have been one of the 5 teams in the Western Conference that I picked to like deserve that spot. But I get it. I think they'll bring in good ratings. I think the Luka Booker rivalry is probably making the commissioner's office salivate. So I get it. I understand why they made that decision. I think we're a better team, and I feel good about our chances in that one. But obviously anything could happen.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Dallas Mavericks look like by that point. They never really looked good post-trade, and they haven't made a ton of changes, as we talked about on our recent episode 2 weeks ago as well, since they made that trade, other than, they really haven't done much. So I'm interested to see what they look like at that point, and hopefully the Suns can take that one on Christmas Day. I have thought about the fact that Christmas will be as toxic as possible online, which does kind of suck to make that day in particular extremely toxic. So my recommendation to most people is stay off the internet during that game and just let it play out the way it plays out and have fun with your family.
I say go on the internet.
You mean lean into it, right?
Be a little bit of a gremlin. I don't know.
Make Christmas like The Bear. Have you watched the Christmas episode of The Bear yet?
Of The Bear, yeah. Actually, I was meaning to tell you. It took me forever to watch season 2 because I was watching with someone else. We had to watch on the same schedule. But finally got there, and season 2 is awesome.
Yeah,
the Christmas episode.
That's what the Mavs versus the Suns on Christmas Day is going to be like. I think.
Oh yeah, Luka is Jamie Lee Curtis's character?
Yeah, they look alike. Okay, So that's what we know about the schedule so far. Any other thoughts? And we can take a break.
No, I think the only other thing probably to say to people is the full schedule should release this week.
Oh, they did announce the Lakers game was the second. Lakers Suns is the second game of the season as well. I forgot about that one, I think.
I to be honest, I'm not sure I even saw that. But I'm expecting the full schedule to drop any day now.
Yeah.
So we should be able to come back with a fuller analysis, I guess, of what it looks like. Obviously, how many national TV games they'll have. I anticipate many. I don't think there's going to be too much drama there.
Yeah.
But remember, NBA TV games don't count. I mean, they'll include them in the number, but they don't really count. ESPN, TNT broadcasts, those are the broadcasts that we're really after in terms of being meaningful for national audiences. And yeah, we'll get to more of that analysis when we get it, but should be soon.
Yep. Should be next week. So we'll talk about that next week. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the Ring of Honor. All right, Sam. Shams Charania announced, along with the Suns, really the Suns announced, that Amari Stoudemire and Shawn Marion will finally be inducted into the Suns Ring of Honor in separate ceremonies this upcoming season, with their jerseys also being retired. So no players will be able to wear their numbers strategically, with Amari Stoudemire, of course, picking number 32 because the other number...
we're just gonna gloss over that aspect of it and pretend that's fine. That part doesn't matter.
It's finally happening though, and this is something
Yes.
we've talked about on this podcast before. We've asked for it, I guess is a better way to put it.
We've talked about this for years.
I think it's not a coincidence that this is happening under a new ownership group. I think there's a good chance that Amari Stoudemire and Shawn Marion looked back on part of their time with the Suns in a negative light because of the previous owner of the Suns. Now there's a new one. They can look back on it a little bit differently. Both guys ending kind of unceremoniously their time with the Suns, with Amari Stoudemire being told, this is a story he told, being told by Robert Sarver that he could be replaced, and then the Suns signed Hakeem Warwick and Hedo Turkoglu, and Shawn Marion, of course, being traded.
And Josh Childress. Don't disrespect Josh Childress, the third piece of that puzzle.
Of course. And Shawn Marion, of course, being traded for Shaq and just sort of being one of the biggest mistakes I think the Suns had made in the Steve Nash era. But now they'll be redeemed, and those jerseys will hang in the rafters, if you will, in that Ring of Honor. And what was your first thoughts when hearing about this?
I mean, this news made my week. I've been waiting a few days now since the news dropped for us to get a chance to talk about this because I think both of us, we're different ages, right? But we both share this experience of this era of Suns basketball is what brought us into the fan base. We reference older Suns history sometimes too, but like I can appreciate what a legend like Charles Barkley or any of the guys from that era, or if you go back even further, I don't know, Alvin Adams, Walter Davis, whoever. I can appreciate what all of those people did in their respective eras of Suns history, but at the end of the day, I didn't grow up with those teams. I grew up with the 7 seconds or less Suns.
Yeah.
And I went through different phases with each of the big three as my favorite player. I think most consistently, to be honest, I was always a little bit of a hipster, so I think most consistently, if you asked me who my favorite player was, it was probably Marion of the three.
Right.
But I went through phases with all three of them, and they meant so much to my formative years of why I love the sport of basketball. To be honest with you, this past week, since this news came out, I don't even play a lot of 2K anymore. I know you don't either.
Yeah.
Such a frustrating game in so many ways. Same damn game every year, yada, yada. But this past week, I've been booting it up so much because you know how they have the classic teams?
Right.
And I've just been going back.
Yeah.
They've got the 04-05 team in there with Joe Johnson and
fun.
Q as the 4th and 5th starters. The rosters still always piss me off a little bit because they're not totally accurate and a bunch of other stuff. But I've just been going back and playing with that roster a ton and just kind of like sitting in my nostalgia and just enjoying it and savoring it. By the way, also confirmed here that each guy will have their own individual induction night. So they're not like sharing the same ceremony, so to speak. But yeah, my first reaction was that this is awesome news. I had somewhat lost hope in them ever doing it. Ishbia comes in and again scores another win. Easy PR
An
victory
easy
for
win
him.
too, yeah. It's just one of those things that Suns fans have been asking for. There's no downside in this at all. And then there will be an opportunity for tickets to be sold to that. You know, I was there when Steve Nash was inducted, and it was an amazing event.
You were there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in the arena.
I forget that, man. I forget that. Wow.
And, you know, he was completely wasted and spoke way too long during halftime, and it was hilarious. At a certain point, Al McCoy had to like grab him and take him away from the mic because it was going to never end. It was incredible. And all the other Suns legends were in attendance, you know, because all the other Ring of Honor guys who can get there for those nights. And I'm sure it'll be the same this season, whereas a lot of guys will be in Phoenix in general just because there's a lot going on here.
I would hope Steve is there at both nights and that he has a chance to speak a little bit himself, not to take the spotlight away. You know, in many respects, Steve taking the spotlight away from a guy like Shawn Marion was maybe one of the reasons that led to that Marion for Shaq trade.
Yeah.
But yeah, time heals old wounds, and they've got some space between them. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I hope
Shawn Marion is the one with the championship, so I'm sure he feels fine.
Exactly. I hope he at least has the chance to be there and support his former teammates, that is.
You know, I'm looking at the leaders on the Suns for games, minutes played, field goals, you know, all kinds of stats on Basketball Reference, and Shawn Marion is all over it. It's just insane to see how much he did for this team, and it was just a guy who could do kind of everything on the floor relatively well. And, you know, of course, Amar'e Stoudemire. Now, I will say, I think Shawn Marion was drafted, 99, I think? Is that right?
Yeah. He was he?
Something
he was drafted 99, and Amar'e was 02.
Yeah, and I didn't become a Suns fan until 2005, so I missed the 04-05 season. I mean, I watched it from an NBA perspective, but I watched every game basically from 2005 until now. And so I really fell in love with both guys, but, you know, had a lot more time watching Amar'e Stoudemire because Amar'e Stoudemire was around after Shawn Marion was on the team. You know, one of my memories of the first thing I think of when I think of Shawn Marion is the Suns really shouldn't have traded him, and how frustrating that season was immediately afterwards with Shaq, where they lost their entire identity. And whereas when it comes to Amar'e Stoudemire, I think one of the first things I think of is that 2010 run, which was nowhere near his peak. You know, he was unbelievable before his injuries, and I wish that I got to see more of that as a Suns fan. And I am jealous of Suns fans that got to see, you know, Shawn Marion and Amar'e Stoudemire be drafted and sort of watch them grow into the players that they became, which is sort of when I started watching, when they were kind of peaking athletically. And it's just fascinating to look at what they've done for the team. When I think of Stoudemire, I think of that 2010 run, and then, of course, I think of just the aggression at the rim. I remember Jalen Rose covering the NBA back then used to call him the LeBron James of the paint, which is funny because LeBron James is the LeBron James of the paint. But I think the point that he was trying to make is, as dominant as LeBron James was everywhere, Amar'e Stoudemire was in the paint. And that's how good of a player he was, just unafraid to dunk it on everyone at all times, and just an unbelievable player. And then with Shawn Marion, I think Shawn Marion, the way people talk about Shawn Marion, I feel like just kind of is right now. You know, like he's sort of given that credit of starting what became the NBA now. Right?
We talked earlier about James Harden will not be looked kindly upon in NBA history. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit hyperbolic.
Yeah.
James Harden, in some respects, changed the game as well, for sure.
Yeah.
But Marion is a guy very much, even though, you know, it took him a while to win the championship ring, but he got it. He wasn't at his peak, but he still got it. He still played an important role with that Dallas team, and ultimately his game is redeemed.
He stared down LeBron James in the finals, crossed him over, and scored at him in one of the biggest moments of the NBA Finals, and it was unbelievable.
I mean, what made me fall in love with Marion as opposed to the other two guys is just the constant hustle, obviously, the defensive impact and all that, but just being a guy who could get to 20 points without having a single play called for him. And yet when he needed his number called, when you needed him to step up, when there were seasons like the season where Amar'e was out and suddenly Marion was the number one scoring option, he led the team in scoring, he had some of the most sensational performances that you would ever see. I think about that year, this was 2006, second round against the Clippers. They had to go to 7 games against that team. Marion averaged, I want to say, like close to 30 points per game in that series,
Crazy.
that second round series on one end. And so he's their go-to scorer. Like, they are running plays for him. He is working the pick and roll with Nash. And on the other end, he's like playing a lot of possessions guarding Elton Brand in his absolute prime on the other end, who has like 60 pounds, not 60, but has like 30, 40 pounds on him. Like, what he was able to do in terms of his versatility. People call him a Draymond prototype sometimes, but I think honestly that's pretty disrespectful. Like, the level
He was
of
such a better offensive player, yeah.
The level, yeah, and granted, he may not have had the playmaking. I'll
No, he
give him on
doesn't.
that.
He didn't, yeah.
But everything else, he was such a phenomenally talented offensive player compared to a guy like Draymond. Like, it is pretty disrespectful to even compare the two. Marion only ever made an All-NBA third team.
It's unbelievable.
Which I
and
was
didn't he
looking at
never
the other
make
day.
a defensive team too?
And he never made a defensive
That's
team, which is
insane.
even more insane. But, you know,
It's
that's
disrespectful.
really that's just a prime example of his teammates on the Suns letting him down, because the voters would just not allow a player coming from an average defensive team be selected to one of those teams, even though Marion was
He
was
would
doing
now,
all
though.
the legwork.
The voting has changed
I think he
now,
would
I
now.
feel like. Yeah,
I think
he
now.
would get that credit.
And
now.
also, for the All-NBA stuff, like, I was thinking about this with Amari too. Amari was going toe-to-toe with Tim Duncan, KG, and Dirk Nowitzki. Marion was going toe-to-toe in the forward voting for the All-NBA team with all those guys too, though. And the fact that you had those three bona fide first-ballot Hall of Famers, just who you knew were going to be taking up spots every single year, crowded the field so that I think there's less competition on the wing and at the forward spot now.
Yeah,
like, I think if
right.
Marion played in today's league, he would be on some first or second teams.
Yeah.
He'd be averaging 24, 25 points per game, 13, 14 rebounds. He'd be
Well-
on all defensive teams, respected as one of the top defenders. He'd be taking and hitting more threes, even though I recognize that his form obviously was weird.
It did matter.
But it didn't
You
matter.
just
He
had-
made him.
Suns fans all knew. You just had to get over that. I think he played in an era where you could have a guy on your team that was all defense and they didn't do anything else. You know, the Tony Allens or whatever. And so he was competing against players like that. Whereas now you have to do something offensively in order to play in the NBA. And it's actually the reason he would fit so well in today's game. He could be that all defensive level defensive player on one end and still be incredibly effective offensively. And, you know, the famous thing, they used to talk about it every game. The announcers would talk about it with Marion. You don't even have to run a play for him. And it's true. Because he can be effective off the ball as a shooter, as a cutter. He could drive on closeouts, or he can get the offensive rebound himself. He had that second jump ability.
The quickest second jump I've still ever seen in the NBA to this day.
And it's like he would, you know, I think Amari in some ways would struggle a little bit now to be the player that he was, as dominant as he was. Now he would still be incredibly effective, but defensively he would have to even get better than, you know, because it was obviously always Amari's problem in the past.
He probably would have been a 3-point shooter.
And he would have to shoot threes now. Yeah, I think he would kind of have
But
to.
I think he could have.
And yeah, I do too. I actually do, because, you know, maybe it would have taken him time to develop it, but I think he could have. Whereas Marion, you could drop onto, like, Marion would be a perfect fit on the Suns now. You could drop, if you took Marion from his prime, you could drop him onto any team in the NBA, and he would be effective because he can guard 1 through 4 and maybe even 5 on a lot of teams, probably 5 on a lot of teams, and be effective on both sides of the court right now. He's a fascinating player, and I think when people talk about him now, like I said, the narrative on Shawn Marion, I think, has come around to being accurate in some ways. Because, you know, the other part of Shawn Marion that maybe we don't need to talk about, but it is part of the story with Shawn Marion, it's that he was unhappy a lot of that time on the Suns because he wasn't getting the credit. He wasn't getting the plays run for him because of all of the ways he was effective without that. Mm-hmm. And what's nice about his career, I think, is that he left, you know, became the star in Miami, and it didn't work. But then he was able to win a championship in Dallas. And now I think the narrative on him has come around in a way to give him the credit that he wanted. But what's funny is that credit is for what he was doing on the Suns.
Well,
more than anything
forced
else.
Him an experience that humbled him because he had to embrace a new role and understand that he was entering a new chapter in his career. And That's just life. Everyone, is on that path, and everyone gets around there eventually. Remember, Miami wasn't even the final stop for him before he got to Dallas.
Yeah.
I think he also played like a season and a half in Toronto.
He did, yeah.
After that, on some really mediocre Toronto teams. Maybe Chris Bosh was on that team, but like just not a good Toronto team when I think about the Toronto Raptors in the mid-late 2000s. So it took him a while to get there, but he eventually did. To be an obnoxious stat nerd for a second, I think we pointed out, so Marion's 5th on the all-time Suns leading points list. Amari is 7th. If you're curious, by the way, about where Devin Booker is, he's already 4th. He's already passed both of those guys.
That's so crazy.
But if we scroll on down over to everyone's favorite stat, value over replacement player, Sean Marion is the all-time Suns leader in VORP.
And win shares, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Those advanced stats...
They love
even
defense,
if he wasn't
rebounding, yeah.
Even if he wasn't necessarily getting the credit that he felt that he deserved. Stat nerds always loved Sean Marion. If you played fantasy basketball in the mid-2000s, you loved Sean Marion, that's for sure, too.
He was also, I should mention as part of this conversation, 2nd all-time in minutes played for the Suns. So that affects that as well. But I think that's an incredible stat with Sean Marion that I did not realize personally until I was looking at this. Devin Booker's not even... He's like 6,000 minutes, 7,000 minutes away from Sean Marion in minutes. That's how much Sean Marion played. First of all, he never got injured, but also played on the Suns for a long time, almost 10 years. And now we're able to actually honor him for what he did for the franchise, and I'm really excited. I hope to go to both of those nights if I can afford tickets. I'm like a little bit afraid of what Matt Ishbia is going to charge for tickets this upcoming season with the amount of money he's spent on the team. I really have no idea. Like, I mean, he's making the games free on TV, so like I don't know.
Some sticker shock.
Yeah,
there might be. Yeah.
I'm a little nervous.
There were a couple other things. Did you catch? By the way, both of these guys had interviews on Arizona Sports 98.7 last week. Did you catch those interviews?
I didn't listen to I listened to the Sean Marion one. I didn't listen to all of the Amari Stoudemire one yet.
There were a couple of interesting things I wanted to bring up relating to their era, but also maybe connecting it a little bit to our current era in some ways too. The one that caught me off guard with Marion, he complains. Look, he's a bit of a ranter. He's always been this way. He goes on rants. You can kind of tell he's a little bit of an angry guy about stuff. He doesn't necessarily let stuff go. And that's okay. But he was talking about how ultimately why he felt that some of those teams didn't win a championship. And he pointed out the fact that he felt their downfall was that they weren't going deep enough. It's interesting because like one thing that I know Steve has talked about relating back to that era is he talks about how he really wished that D'Antoni in particular had leaned even more heavily into their offensive philosophy and shot more threes and pushed the pace even more and all that stuff. I thought it was interesting to hear Shauna talk about how he thought they were all playing too many minutes, that they weren't deep enough,
right,
that they needed more of a bench. Do you feel like that's more of a shot at, and obviously he didn't mention him by name, but do you think it's kind of a little bit of a shot at D'Antoni and the way he managed those teams?
Yeah.
Or do you think it's more of a shot, which is the other way I think you could interpret this, again at Robert Sarver, who, as we know, in the mid-2000s, the Suns had opportunities to add depth.
Luol Deng.
Yeah. Rajon Rondo.
Imagine if
Rudy
the Suns,
Fernandez.
if the Suns had just those two players alone, I think in those early runs, they probably would have won a championship.
In a span of 4 years, the Suns traded 3 first-round picks that became Luol Deng, Rajon Rondo, and Rudy Fernandez. And if they had even 2 of those 3 guys...
Rudy Fernandez, by the way, still plays for Spain.
Rudy Fernandez did not become he was not on the level of those other 2 guys, but to be sure, he played a few years in the NBA, had his cup of coffee, and he was a valuable role player.
He would have helped
like
guys play less minutes. Yeah.
Who would have helped in those playoff runs. And the Suns just booted their ability to get any of those guys. And that responsibility falls squarely on Sarver, not on anyone else.
It's both. It's a shared responsibility, but I don't know that, D'Antoni had good players that I perceived as good players on the team that he didn't play anyway, later on. So I'm not sure. I think that's kind of on both of them. But I think you're right that if he had better players, that maybe there would have been more pressure to play them. I don't know that that's the reason that they didn't win. You can jump into conspiracies, of course, but we don't have to do that.
And they covered how they felt about that with Amari too, actually. And so the thing that Amari said that I thought was interesting is he just talked about how he thought what made them so successful. His interview was with Bickley and Murata, I think. He noted everyone positions 1 through 5 was in top shape, and he really hammered home the point about nobody could keep up because they were conditioned so well. It was obviously they were playing small ball, so Amari was at the 5, and he was just faster than 5s in the NBA that day. Marion was at the 4, he was faster than 4s, but even Steve was in the prime of his career, and he was conditioned so well. A lesson that I think we could take into the season this year for the Suns as we exit the Chris Paul era, and we've talked a little bit in the past about, look, we've got a lot of talented isolation scorers on this team, but maybe we would benefit from kicking up the pace a little bit and really focusing on the conditioning. And another reason I bring this up, you saw that video of DeAndre Ayton working out a couple days ago. I know you did, so don't pretend that you didn't.
No, I definitely did. And I had the same reaction as you. And
I'm going to say the skill work that he's doing, for anyone who didn't see the video, he's just doing some skill work, finishing around the basket, doing some layups, dribble moves, whatever. That part's whatever. And the reason that part is whatever for me is because he's not playing a defender. It's defenseless basketball, so it doesn't do anything for me. But what marks both of us, he looks lean.
Yeah.
He looks like he shed some weight.
And I was the same as you.
If there's a strategy there.
I was the same as you in that the first time I saw that, I was like, is this just like that type of thing where guys get a different haircut, and now I'm like, do they look skinnier to me, or is it just that they have a different haircut or different, beard or whatever? But yeah, I think you're right, and I think the more that I saw of him working out, the more it seems like he was leaner, specifically leaner than he looked in the off seasons in the past. Because I think in some ways, I think he played himself into shape a little bit as the season went on. Whereas if DeAndre Ayton comes into the season in shape, that would be helpful for everyone involved. I don't think Kevin Durant ever stops, so he's always in shape. I don't think Devin Booker ever stops, so he's always in shape. And, we'll see what we learn about Bradley Beal, but I have a feeling he's like those guys as well. That's what it takes to score 30 points in the NBA. So I assume that everyone, if they all come into
not
season,
necessarily ask James Harden again, but, I take your point.
He's an enigma. But yeah, that would be really, really, really helpful.
I think I take it as a positive sign, maybe, that he's taking the defensive role seriously, because I just think about the additional dividends, what you could gain from a truly in shape DeAndre Ayton going into this season, a guy who can play a little bit faster, a guy who Vogel can deploy in slightly more versatile defensive schemes,
or just can play more. He doesn't play a ton of minutes. More.
He's always been a guy who he hovers around 28 to 30
and
minutes per game.
And you could tell when
year.
He's tired.
It
affects his game
good.
pretty dramatically.
I actually feel really good about Drew Eubanks as our backup. That being said, if Ayton can give us 33 minutes per game and not, 29, 30 this year, and Eubanks doesn't have to play as much, I think it makes us a better team. So, if this is the best conditioning of his career, that would be great. I'm not going to promise anyone that it is based on that one video, but he looks lean.
I see it too. Before we get off the Ring of Honor, the next one we got going into the Ring of Honor is Devin Booker, right? There's nothing really that happened between Sean Marion and Amari Stoudemire for anyone to deserve to be on that list until Devin Booker.
You don't think Chris Paul's getting in?
I don't think he is.
I don't think he is either. That's a joke.
And look, I don't think it's that crazy of a question. I know he didn't play here long enough compared to a lot of these guys, but he did. He was the second best player on a team that made it to the NBA Finals, and that says a lot, I think. And, I don't think he'll get in anyway, because I think there's what's the formula? It's really kind of hard to figure it out. It's a combination of longevity and success. It's not just one or the other.
If they had won in 2021,
he'd
Chris
be in.
Would have gotten
even if he was traded the next year, he'd be in. And I do wonder, after Chris Paul has retired, maybe people will feel a little bit differently about him. Maybe he will find that kind of credit the way somebody like Sean Marion did, obviously not for changing the game, but people appreciate your career a little differently once you're done. So I don't know, maybe people will view it differently from the Suns' perspective once he retires, but I just don't think he will. So then who else would it be, right? The best player in that time outside of Devin Booker was Goran Dragic, probably. and he's not getting in. So they weren't ever good. They never made the playoffs.
Another guy who maybe would benefit from if Ishbia had just called him up and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, the former boss was an asshole, but can
do you want to come hang out? Yeah,
yeah.
Do you want to come be here for the Ring of Honor and see Steve Nash? Yeah,
yeah."
So it's Devin Booker. You're looking at these.
Book.
You're looking at these. A lot of these leaderboards. He's 8th in minutes played. Will be probably 7th, or he'll be 7th. Yeah, by the end of next season, most likely. Field goals. He's 4th overall in field goals. So he could be even higher on that list. Could even pass Sean Marion this season, depending on how many games he played. He's number 1 in 3-point field goals. And then, of course, you mentioned where he is in points. And, with Devin Booker, I think the conversation isn't about whether or not he's going to be in the Ring of Honor. He's going to be in the Ring of Honor. It's how much more does he have to do to become the greatest Suns player ever at this point? Or is he that? I think some fans will probably say he is. The question is kind of what solidifies it for him. Because in some ways, he's already been more successful than even Steve Nash or Sean Marion or Amari Stoudemire in that he's been to the NBA Finals as the best player on the team.
Right. And Chuck had that too.
Yeah.
But Chuck didn't have the longevity.
Yeah,
that
and nowhere
has
close
already.
at this point. Right?
Only played 4 seasons for Phoenix.
Booker's doubling him up already.
Look, honestly, if you told me right now that you think Devin Booker is here's the thing. Devin Booker is not the best Sun of all time if you use the word as who had the greatest peak. Like, who was the best player in the NBA at the time when they were a Phoenix Sun?
An MVP or 2 MVPs, right.
I think that is probably still Charles Barkley.
But it's just it's a different conversation, though, right?
I think that's Charles Barkley, unless I was just going to say KD makes a crazy run at it this year, which I think is not like totally out of the realm of possibility because KD is arguably still a top 5 player in the NBA, as Chuck was in 1993. What we're really talking about is who is the greatest Sun of all time, and that's when you bring in the longevity, the emotional attachment that
it's just how we feel. Yeah, really, that's what's the funny part about being a fan.
If you were gonna tell me right now that you think Devin Booker is the greatest Sun of all time, I wouldn't call you crazy. I wouldn't.
I think he's on track to be.
For me, I think he needs a couple more years. If he wins a championship, that solidifies it.
It's done.
Conversation.
It's
done.
over. Yeah.
Game over.
And the sad part about being the Suns is if they make the finals again, he's probably got it, even if they lose. But if he wins, for sure, yeah.
He's 2 healthy seasons away. Probably, I'm like estimating here based on around how many points he's put in the past. He's probably 2 healthy seasons away from capturing the all-time points record, currently held by Walter Davis. He's 4th right now, as I said. He's going to pass Kevin Johnson in like the opening week of the season, by the way. So that'll be exciting. We should be looking out for that. Assuming he has assuming he has a healthy season this year and plays even like 60 games, he should pass Alvin Adams for 2nd by the end of the season. Then it's going to take him like an entire year after that to be in the vicinity of catching Walter Davis, who's like 2,000 points ahead of Alvin Adams. But he can get there.
Yeah.
And he can get there within 2 years, which would still be far before even the end of his current contract extension, which I believe doesn't end until 2028. So if he's in Phoenix all the way through his contract extension, he's going to have every single record.
If he
by the end of
if he finishes his contract and then signs another contract, stays with the Suns, he'll probably be number 1 in basically everything. Like basically everything. Maybe not rebounds because the big men get the rebounds and stuff like that. But like we're talking points, assists, field goals, 3-pointers. Every single thing that he could be.
Every guard stat.
Yeah. And then of course at that point it'll be of course wins, playoff wins, and those kinds of stats that really matter.
It's actually,
I think, to Suns fans.
It's a good point. Where's he in assists? So he's 7th in assists right now,
and he'll be 6th by the end of next season.
He'll be 6th by the end of opening night because he's 2 assists
2 behind Jeff Hornacek. Yeah,
he's 2 behind Jeff Hornacek, which is really funny. Steve has 7,000 assists, and Book currently has 2,500.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's a tough one. He might not get there. He'll get at least. I see Alvin Adams 4,000 assists at 3rd. He will at least get to 3rd.
Yeah,
but passing KJ and Steve for the assist mark on this franchise
crazy number
is going to be tough.
7,000 assists is insane. 6,997 is what he has as a Suns player. But yeah, I think we're there. We're basically on track for Devin Booker to become the greatest Suns player ever. And if you believe that right now, like Sam said, you have evidence on your side.
If you believe that right now, you are probably 18 years old, but you are also not crazy. You are not crazy for believing that.
Yeah. Only the older Suns fans will, I think, argue with you there. And, they have evidence as well on their side. So it's a fair argument. It's a fair conversation. But I think that even the longtime Suns fans could see a track where Devin Booker it just becomes clear. And, and I think it could happen by the end of this current contract that he has. And, if he signs another extension, then we'll have even more time to talk about it. But what a fascinating career that he has. One thing I'll say, too, I'll just mention it here. I responded, but we did get a message on Patreon about Amare and Sean Marion. And the question was, if they could mentor anybody on the Suns, who would it be? Each of those guys. And I'll say my answer that I messaged back, and I'd like to hear what you'd say. I'd say, I think I'd pick both of them mentoring Toumani Camara.
Toumani Camara. I made the joke recently that Toumani Camara is going to be a mix of the two of them.
Yeah, we called him Toumani Camarian. I had to say that.
He's kind of got, he moves a little bit like Amari when he catches the ball in offense.
He does. He screens also, like him. He attacks him like him.
He fills the versatility generally on the court of what Marion is trying to do.
He's got Marion's body.
Man. You're setting me up. It's Aiden for Amari.
And
you know why.
Well, it's
why.
obvious. The aggression.
You're gonna make me say it. Yeah, it's the aggression. It's if we could instill that mindset in DA,
but you can't though, right?
Unstoppable. I don't know. I haven't tried
nobody's just become that.
I haven't tried all of the torture tricks, the interrogations, I don't know what they could do to him.
You either come into the NBA like that, like Blake Griffin did, or you don't develop that kind of aggression, I don't think. So I don't know. I think it would still help just for screening and rolling in angles and things like that. So I think that's a fair one. What about Marion?
On this current team?
Yeah, that one's tougher, right?
If it's not Toumani.
Is it Booker?
Could we maybe Josh Okogie could become a good shooter by stealing Marion's
adopting his form?
Adopting Marion's form.
Make your form worse, Josh Okogie. We've tried everything else.
Suddenly he's a 40% catch and shoot 3-point guy. I would take that. Or Keita Bates-Diop or something is kind of
it'd be Keita Bates-Diop, but I don't know if that's worth it. I almost feel like it would be better if it was just Booker at that point, just to see what kind of dividends you get out of maximizing the top end talent in Devin Booker. But yeah, fascinating. I'm excited for both of those guys. You got anything else before we go?
No, just keep an eye out obviously for an extra episode this week. What do we got going on this week, Mike? There's some Bahamian basketball.
Yeah, that's happening right now that we're missing. It's hard to find online.
It is really hard to find, but obviously we've talked about both Ayton and Eric Gordon are on that team. Buddy Hield as well for another talented NBA player. So yeah, we'll see if we can maybe dig out the footage of that.
I'm definitely going to find that
interesting. Yeah, anything interesting coming from there. Otherwise, the schedule release. Keep your eyes peeled for that as well.
Yep. And thanks everyone for listening. If you'd like to hear that extra episode we drop every week, patreon.com/thetimeline, $6 a month for an extra episode every week, and join our Discord for as low as $3 a month. Thank you everyone, and we'll be back talking about the schedule very, very soon.